And that's bring me actually to my next point. You graduated as an undergrad from Caltech, and then you went to Princeton for the graduate school. But how you get initial in physics? Like usually, one problem we face sometimes is to convince students that physics don't bite. You can understand the world around you. You can love it. You can understand everything better around you if you decide to study physics. So how Kip Thorne get into I want to study physics?
Well, when I was small, growing up in a Logan, Utah town, fairly high up in the mountains, Rocky Mountains, the snow was deep. Uh, the snow plows would drive the snow up to a height 3 times higher than my father's height. And so it was obvious the most powerful job in the world was be a snowplow driver. And that's what I wanted to do until mother took me to a lecture at the local church about the solar system. And I fell in love with the idea of the planets going around the sun. And she helped me do a scale model of the solar system. We drew a 4-foot circle on the corner on the sidewalk in front of our house, and then laid out the planets from there, their sizes relative to that sun. And that circle was the sun, and the Earth was on down in front of about the third house down the street, and Pluto was out in the next town. It wasn't even in our town. And seeing that, I was just totally enchanted that there could be so much space out there between the planets and how the planets moved. And then a few years later, I found in a used bookstore a book called 1, 2, 3 Infinity by a cosmologist, a Russian cosmologist, George Gamov. And I read in there that the thing that controls the planets and controls, in fact, everything around us, controls the universe, is the laws of physics. And so I immediately wanted to understand the laws of physics and curious about them, what they are, how they arose. Uh, so at that point, I think I was 13 years old, and I never lost that curiosity. I decided at that point that's what I wanted to do with my life, and so that's what I've done.
That's great. So basically, a small thing could inspire people that they want to learn about the world around them. They want to know more about physics.
I think we're all very curious when we're children. Fortunately, I had a mother who preserved that curiosity and inspired her kids to really dig in to understand the things they were curious about. And so having maintained a child's curiosity as I grew into adulthood was very central to my not being afraid of physics. In fact, to seeing physics is the way to feed my curiosity.
That's great. That's basically, I know, as I said, everyone has his own picture to how things happening around them, and sometimes it shapes their future too. And this your story, how you get to physics, and then it's pretty much, I think, also how you get into gravitational field, like working on the part. And as I said, like we tried sometime to recruit students who would like to tell them, guys, physics is important, physics is interesting, everything around you is physics. So I was happy to hear your story about it. And hopefully I think it will inspire a lot of our undergraduates into into physics. But then, going to grad school myself, I went to Stony Brook, New York. You went to Princeton for your grad school, and we all face hard times. We go there, full of passion, everything will be smooth, everything will be good. And then we face, the difficulties of grad school, and then the difficulties of doing research. And to me personally, research is about how many times you fail before you found the good answer or the correct answer. So, to you, what's the challenges that you faced in your research, or if you want to mention a general idea about
Well, let me go back. The first big challenge, the first big dislocation was just going to undergraduate school. I thought I was kind of smart when, when I was in high school, and I went to Caltech for undergraduate school. I discovered that all the other students were smarter than I was. their minds worked more quickly was the key point that I learned much more slowly than other people did, and so I had to find my own ways to learn things more deeply, so I wouldn't have to relearn them the next year or 3 years later. The main thing I developed for dealing with that was I started to keep notebooks in which I wrote down in my own words, my own way, the most important things I'd learned, mostly about physics, but also about mathematics or things that were complicated and the things that I wanted to really learn. Write them down in my own words. If there was a derivation, then make up my own derivation in my own way. So make these things my part of myself, and that way, I not only had the notebooks to fall back on the following year or many years later, but I also had lodged them in my mind by doing that. So that basically was the thing. It took me a year and a half to get my feet under myself, but I was really struggling for the first year and a half of undergraduate school. Fortunately, graduate school was different in that you didn't feel like everybody else was right there alongside you, competing with you to, and which I didn't like, and which I tried to shove out of my mind. But in graduate school, we each went off in our own directions on our own research projects, and it was a much more joyous thing. Uh, Throughout my career, well, early in my career, I learned this from my PhD advisor, John Wheeler, that in his words, the best physicists tend to be the ones who make the most mistakes the most rapidly on their way toward the truth. And if you're afraid of making mistakes, then you're never going to go anywhere. Mistakes are a major part of learning. The mistakes are the major part of digging more deeply into things. And that has truly been my experience.
It's very inspiring to hear it. I remember from my grad school when I was afraid for the same thing, coming from Egypt to grad school here in Stony Brook. My advisor had to tell me, you know, perfection is the enemy of good. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. It will never happen. But accumulating of good things might lead you to a perfection. So as you said, accumulating of mistakes make you learn.
Yes.
Just try to learn. That's very inspiring. But